So, good morning, everyone. My name is Lanique. I'm with the Tess Adams Team here at Keller Williams. And today we're going to learn how to navigate Section 8. Specialization is called Section 8. That was the common name. They did change it. So it's actually the housing choice voucher. Is it still Section 8? Yes, it is. Even in the legal terms, they had both in them. So if you hear somebody say HCV, adjustment to housing choice voucher, it's the same thing. It's a HUD subsidized voucher program for low income families that allows them to afford living in a place. Otherwise, most likely they'd be homeless, especially due to the United States tearing down a vast majority of the projects that they had that HUD also had. Section 8 is different from the projects. It's more of an independent step. When they tore down the projects, they had to give people vouchers for the people that was more financially empowered than that group to live in the projects. So it was like a tier system. So eligibility is determined by your gross income. So you would be surprised that years ago, and this is another reason why I love our late President Jimmy Carter, a lot of military vets were on Section 8. They had to have a voucher program. By him increasing the military pay, their gross income came up, so they were able to afford homes and rentals as the average American. But before then, they actually were on voucher programs. Teachers are on voucher programs. It's not known to us that that's how it goes, but the income is also based on how many people you have in your family. So you can make 75,000 a year, but if you got 6 people in a household, you're technically in that lower income poverty range. The number doesn't balance how many miles you have to feed, how many people you gotta take care of.
So it doesn't go by just adults, it goes by children as well.
It goes by not even just children.
Like here, can you look at the elderly person, something like that?
It goes by gross income and the number of people in your house. Because now they also allow home health aides that work with people with disabilities to be on the voucher program. So another eligibility, they cannot exceed, and this is where people don't realize how a lot of people that they on the program or eligible for the program, it's 50% of the median income. So that's a huge, that's a large number of people. So if you break down the average income in an area, you would be surprised how many people are really eligible to be in there. And then remember, it also goes by the county. We'll say, what's one of the more expensive county in Philadelphia?
Bucks.
Sorry. Say it again.
Bucks.
So Bucks County.
Sorry, what's the question?
So a more expensive county to live in Philadelphia. You can still get a 1-bedroom rental in Philadelphia below 900. You can't get that every year. Oh, Bucks County, that New York, same way. They're starting at Section 8. You can be in Section 8 and in the project and paying $1,800 living in the project. That's not normal for Philadelphia. So it also goes by your county and how much the average income is there. It also allows for a lot more people to be in the program than which is the state. KHA must provide 75% of the voucher applicant. Income does not exceed 30% of the area. It is literally based on your income and how many people in the household. In the area in which you're applying to live. Does anyone have any questions about that part?
Real quick, the last part, the 75% of the voucher evidence does not exceed 30%. Okay.
So they do it in 2 ways. It's the 50% and then they check again with the 30. So that's when I explained that you have actually a lot of professionals that have full-time jobs, 2 jobs on Section 8. their income still doesn't meet the requirement for them to be able to afford living without any type of assistance. Unfortunately, teachers is a very time they're on Section 8, and a lot of them are on food stamps because they just don't make enough money with a full-time job, changing children's lives. Our country does not pay enough for them to take care of themselves without assistance. So then you have the voucher process. With public housing authorities, the applicant has to apply first. There's also a window. A lot of times with housing, you're not able to apply all year round. In certain housing, it's so many years it's open. And Philadelphia is one of those counties where it's not open. It's no longer open. They're opening it again in 5 more years where you can actually apply. And then there's a cutoff date. And it's typically, you have 1 to 3 months to apply. They don't allow for a long window. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't know if you mentioned this already, but is it a different process for Philadelphia County as
Yes.
compared to the?
Each county has its own process, its own
It's
window.
not state, it's county.
It goes by county and then state.
Can you apply, like, let's say I need help, I don't wanna just apply everywhere, like
No.
Delaware County, Gulf County?
No, I was gonna explain that in the applying process. So she brought a really good question. Years ago, housing was like that. You can apply to multiple places at one time. Over the last 20 years, they changed it. Now, if you apply for public housing with Section 8, you can only apply in one county at a time. And that also is limiting a lot of people with buying a home. Because back in the day, if you were in Philadelphia and you found a home in Lansdowne, they used to just swap it over. No problem. Today, you cannot do that. They have to, it's called portability, and they have to allow you to port. They can reject you. So once you apply, and then there is like a waiting list. Philadelphia is known for her waiting list. You can be on the waiting list for 15 years. You get accepted. Housing notifies everyone who gets accepted. And then they tell you to come in. Recently, they've been doing the Zooms. They are not good doing on Zooms because they're not explaining the full process. And agents also don't know the full process. So then you have the client and the agent not knowing how to really navigate finding a home for their for the applicant. So in this acceptance process, they explain the process, the rules, the regulations, everything. This also covers the number of bedrooms, and now that it changed with the income, it used to be a flat rate fee, it's not, and now goes by zip code. In Philadelphia, it's not like that other places. Some of them still go by the old rule, you get a flat rate fee for however much your income and the number of bedrooms. This, by Philadelphia adjusting the system with the zip code, it has helped with people being able to find places to live, but it wasn't like a prevalent of options in certain neighborhoods. And then the search. Applicants must look for their own Section 8 approved units. That's why a lot of them end up not finding them. Landlords tend to play a game with Section 8. When you get accepted, it's a time clock. They give you like 3 months to find your place. In recent years, due to housing making a lot of mistakes, they have extended it, but they are thinking about going back to the old system, giving you only 3 months, and then you only get 2 times to ask for an extension. After that, you're cut. You're dropped from the program. Then you have to start all over and reapply. With that, landlords used to tell tenants, and they're still doing it now, if they go out on their own, they take their application fee, tell them they want to get the place, they ghost them. They don't answer them back, but the clock is now running out. Once that clock runs out, there's nothing the person can do. So this is where agents come in. By us working with them, we actually help them find homes, and we're able to reach out to the landlords, the listing agents, housing, and let them know what's going on. And when you do that, they tend to extend the clock for them and tell them, look, we're going to notify them. We can't do nothing with the application fee, but don't send no deposit, don't do this, don't do anything. They have been, landlords have been known on Section 8 to take a deposit, and then, like I said, ghost them in the process, and then they lose all their money. And with that, the search, after you search, they apply, they accept it, there's an approval process. There's a document from housing that they have to sign. It's called the landlord tenant request form. And then you move on. How can I assist as an agent? Turn your lead into a client. They're just like anyone else. And right now, housing adjusted their payment standards again at the end of 2024. So landlords will be getting about $200 more than the regular income price in an area. And sometimes more than that, depending on what tier group the property is.
I have a question. Does the vouchers also cover like, moving fees?
No,
So deposits first, last security, that type of stuff?
they do not, but
Like
there
somebody
are,
has to pay it out of pocket.
you have to pay moving fees, security deposit, all that, everything else is paid out of pocket. Because it's one step to independence, so if housing provides all that assistance, they feel like the applicants will not be pushed to do better. Cause here was an old school rule too, that they're not doing no more. Back in the day, when you were on housing, you didn't have a job, you had to go down to career leave 5 days a week for 8 hours and apply, and you had to clock in. Career leave's still there, they're trying to make it a better situation. But if they went back to that process, it helped force people to become independent and not so dependent on the system. I don't know what happened for why they, got lax with that part, but that's what it is. So that's why they don't help out anymore with the, deposit. Years ago, they did, because,
So if you're looking at, if you're getting a voucher for $1,800 and you're like, I can put the other 200, so find me a place for 2,000, and then the landlord wants first, last, and security, that actually has to have $6,000 in their account. So they got $6,000 in their account and they was approved for Section 8.
so this is the thing. As an agent, you have to tell them to look for, down payment assistance, like deposit assistance. There's a lot of nonprofits because of that problem that are assisting them with their deposit funds. Yeah.
Some do, I mean, for a number of reasons, but often what you see is owners not asking for first class security because they'll factor in a voucher and that PHA is gonna pay the last month's rent. So they don't necessarily need the last month.
Okay.
And then often PHA will tell the landlord, you can't take a deposit, you can take $250. Will you still take a deposit? More than likely. So the amounts kind of skew for the program.
Okay.
Right, because the benefit is you're getting the guaranteed rent, so you're doing a cost benefit analysis, you might not need as much security.
Can you still ask for like, just say,
You can ask for whatever you like.
Yeah.
obviously, get $1,000, you know, that's your deposit, whatever, instead of 6,000, right? You could do something like that.
I've got a deposit for 4,000,
And PHA pays less months, right?
but they won't do that. This was a different situation.
Oh.
No, see, don't have it from section, they don't.
Oh.
They did it for my property because they wanted to get this neighborhood so bad.
Oh.
So you're in a luxury,
Yes.
he's in the top tier. Like the park around the corner on Bainbridge, they have specific units just for Section 8 for that purpose. So right now, the deposit area is the Wild Wild West. You can,
So there's no like requirements for like what they can or can ask for in terms of first class and
You have to
security?
go out, it's the state law, the state
you
law.
still have to follow, you can't go above what your monthly rent is.
Right, sure.
There are landlords still requiring first, last, and security. There's some doing first and security, some doing just first and last. It is just not consistent.
Mhm.
And that is also causing a problem, because like I said, when you get a rental that's 2,000 and up, and they kind of come up with that deposit, it becomes hard.
Yeah, is there anything like tips or tricks you suggest for like
Yeah.
landlords to,
For landlords,
or yeah, I guess just to like, to help you like, yeah, both sides, like whatever they
Yeah.
get to the field on, yeah.
so I'll do the landlord side first. If you're a landlord or you're a listing agent of a land, because it's section 8, you already know there's low income. Just do one or the two, don't do all of it. It becomes highly unaffordable and then your property sits much longer. And yes, it actually affects you in the long run, short and long run, because now your property's just sitting, you can lease somebody up and got something. And it's now a mandatory 2-year lease. So just open, what's the point of waiting and holding out for someone that can pay 3 months rent and you got something that can do the 1 or 2, but it's now contracted for 2 years to pay that unit.
And I think what you pointed out earlier with some of the programs, there are programs that will assist with the deposit. But as you mentioned, it runs out, just like any other rent program. So if your tenant is falling in November, December, forget about it. But earlier, there might be an option there, because I've had tenants pursue it, but it was November, December, the funds go.
Gotcha. And then, so you said are all leases 2 years? You
Yes,
said,
it's mandatory.
Mandatory
For section 8. For section 8, so that was not, that wasn't done before. And
Is
it's
that
now-
starting in 2025 or did that start?
No, that started a couple of years back, around COVID.
Gotcha.
They implemented, and that's why a lot of them tenants also feel some type of way and want to be in a better unit. So now they're somewhat stuck for 2 years. Before it was a regular 12-month lease. Now it's a mandatory 2-year. And housing rights to lease, landlords no longer have that option. You can negotiate stuff, but it's based on housing preference.
So you said it's like in Philly, PHA writes the lease, the landlord does not write the lease.
Yes, and more housing authorities across the board are now doing it like this because landlords were sneaking certain things in. It's like, because we're writing the lease, we're going to extend the term of the to a mandatory 2 years. That's like the offset of it. Are you willing to accept our lease for 2 years with these conditions? Well, because the payment standard went up, 9 times out of 10 people are saying yes. That's why you're also thinking section 8 and more luxury typical or desirable neighborhood because of that factor.
In addition to that, you will still have the tenant sign your lease and your addendums, but PHA may push back on some of the terms that you put in your facility, ambiguous or too crazy, where you're trying to restrict the tenant, or it's not, it doesn't work with their lease.
So everything, if you have something signed, you submit it through the portal or everything through PHA?
Yeah, I think when you might get there.
Okay, sorry.
You would do it all through the portal.
So, with this part, we're on verify that your client has an active voucher. This is a big thing. There's clients that lost their voucher and they're going around telling agents by not proof, like showing them the first page, oh, I have my voucher. No, they had a voucher. You get to a certain step, you don't waste your time and the landlord's time. But then you find out how they dropped us from the program. So always verify that your client has an active voucher.
You should have them send it.
Yeah, they don't have to give it to you, just send a copy. If you have a landlord as a client as PHA, if you go to the housing fair, all those people have to bring their voucher anyway. So you know whoever's on your signing sheet, that they have an active voucher. But they have to bring it to the housing fair. If you're not at the housing fair, ask them to send you a copy of the front page. That way it has their expiration date. And you know that their voucher expires at a certain time. If they don't lease up, let them know a week ahead of time. Contact housing, request an extension. Find out their needs and wants like any other client. You can use the MLS system to find properties. I actually do it that way. It's actually better because the landlords are more willing to work with agents and help with the clients if you go about it in Section 8, the MLS way. If you work with private landlords, they tend to pay a lot more gain. Take them on tours, have them apply to the properties just like you would anyone else. They'll lease up. They do understand that that's like a traditional rental. Just because you apply doesn't mean you're going to get approved or accepted. So they are aware that they have to pay that application fee too. And like I said, once they apply and they get approved, it's the tenant landlord's request form that has to be filled out by both the tenant and the landlord and dropped off to the housing authority.
Could you find that the landlords that accept Section 8 have less, requirements, or criteria for the applicant?
Not only, I had a landlord that required 650 credit score, Section 8.
Or what about the income part?
So they already know the income part is they're gonna take on.
Section 8, they
Yeah.
assume that, that's assumed.
Yes.
Yeah, I just thought about that after I was asking the questions.
Outside of that, they can still have the same requirement. I've had them reject people for lower credit scores, evictions that weren't even, that could have been overturned, like a young lady got evicted, not because they did anything wrong. The landlord wanted them out of the building, so that was his way about going about the process. So now everybody in there has an eviction, and it was like, even though on paper it says he wanted them out of the building, so he went about it and evicted them that way. They never did nothing wrong, but it still said eviction, so that's, that's hard to do.
Does the housing authority check folks' credit scores?
No, that's your job as the
So
agent.
it's just, PHA is only concerned about income and number of people in the house.
Yep,
Okay.
and that's up to the landlord if you're going to accept someone on low income, no income, good credit, bad credit, that's up to you.
Okay.
Follow up, listing agent or the landlord, again, if it's a private landlord, contact them directly if they're on MLS or off market property, but they have an agent, contact the agent on the status of their inspection. Once you get approved and you hand in the tenant landlord request form, they're given, they have to have an inspection. If they fail inspection, they have a limited time to fix what's needed to pass inspection. If they pass inspection within 2 to 5 weeks, it all depends on how busy Section 8 is, you end up getting the lease in report, Second, once the lease is ready, use DocuSign. It's been smooth, it's actually better. I know it's been better with them, most of them actually have it now. And all parties sign the document and make sure housing includes this now. The land-based payment voter form is actually now included in the lease, it's no longer a whole separate form. All that's included in one large lease. Submit all the necessary documents into command. Send this agent or landlord your W-9 and complete your commissions tab. They do the same thing like any other rental when it comes to that R1 RN. How to use the MLS. So you type in either the county or the zip code or zip code your client likes. Scroll all the way down to the bottom where it says remarks. I say stubborn, I think it's called an asterisk thing. Put that Section 8, another asterisk, and then hit results. It'll show you everything that says Section 8, no zip code or county. From Section 8 approved to no Section 8. Typically, if someone has no Section 8, it's only the bold. Yeah. And then you go out, you click, look through them, same way you do all any other rentals, send it to your client via email. They do check them, they tell you which one they like, take them on a tour. After they sign the tenant agency agreement. So Section 8 recently changed it. It used to be a 5-tier system. Now they went back down to a 4-tier. So, and they changed certain zip codes. One in particular, 19151, used to be in Group 2. At the end of 2024, they put it back in Group 1, meaning the rent, standard rent amount is now low. And that a lot of people got upset because investors started buying 19151. So it's a nice over section of one city. But now when they changed the payment standard, their rent is now going down instead of up. Yet 19131, which is also a municipality right next door, is Carroll Park area, is in tier 2. It's actually not a better neighborhood. What's happening is they're having a gentrification project in Carroll Park right now. So that's why they got selected to be in room two. So that's also, you always got to keep up on what zip code and then what tier. And then they tell you traditional rents, mid-range rents, opportunity rents, and high opportunity. And then high opportunity rents and opportunity, this is what's really messing a lot of other, like the gentleman said, landlords up. They're paying out, if you're in a high opportunity for a room for rent, is $1,522. That's regular rent for a 3-bedroom in certain tiers, like mid-range tier. 1 bedroom is about the same price we're paying out for a room for rent. It's not balanced, unfortunately. They do have to work on that because it is making it hard for these people to lease up. You see here, 191. What is our zip code? We're 19146. We're not even considered a high opportunity. We're just an opportunity. If you have a 3-bedroom in 19146, your rental amount now is $2,830. That's a lot of money. Before it wasn't like that.
Question, so using that example, if you were to list a property and then zip code, what was it, 2008 something?
$2,830 for a 3-bedroom.
For a 3-bedroom, like, do you have to list it at that price?
No, so here's what you're seeing. You're seeing housing literally picks the rent. And that hasn't happened to me with a client. The rent was listed at like $1,200. When we got the lease back, it said $1,500. Contacted housing said the rental amount on the MLS says $1,200. You went up $300. Yes, we picked the price. Okay, so that's another thing. It attracts people to apply. Then they find out this is what you're asking. Now, you can negotiate that, but each time you negotiate, the clock is not fully running out, but they freeze it once they're approved and they get the tenant landlord request form, they freeze it. But what ends up happening is this person gets real frustrated because they didn't pack their stuff. A lot of times they're starting to pack. They're waiting on landlord and housing to come to an agreement. It becomes like that uncertainty feeling. Sometimes they then run out and go find their own place. Because that uncertainty feeling, they don't want to be caught in that no, yes, maybe so, period.
So, sorry.
To put that into terms for us as realtors, you have retail rents, which is what you're going to be focused on for your clients, and you have Section 8 rents, which is more or less advanced.
Fantasy?
Here as well, right? So I have one rental listed. The rental market is $1,400. I told the client, we have a good report. We'll list it at $1,600. We're not going to get a single call in this neighborhood ever. We won't get a single retail person. True to that, we have not. Because we're focused on vouchers. So vouchers can pay that, and then when we get a voucher, the math might change, the MLS number might change, it might go up to 1,800, because we know PHA is gonna pay 1,500. And often what will happen is when you submit a rent, whatever number that is, they're gonna come in low. So if I come in at 1,800, they knock me down $200 or $300. Right, so if I put it in an MLS at 1,800 now, I'm not getting any PHA or retail.
Right.
And if I'm in the middle, I can do both. But you kind of need to know where you are in Center City. I don't know if you want to not do retail. In some of the other neighborhoods, you might be able to get away with it.
Yeah.
But you kind of got to know the deal.
Gotcha.
So that was his experience. My experience is housing went up to the payment standard. So it also depends on your zip code of where that home is, but you do have to be careful with the rental, like you said, that part is true, like I said before, if you put the price at housing amount, a lot of people don't even want to look at it because it's so high.
Right.
But I've seen housing do this to several people. They listed it below. When the lease came back, they chose to give them that.
That max
Other
price.
variables, remember, the landlord can negotiate. I provided a washer, I provided a dryer, I provided a dishwasher. It was recently renovated. The basement, I had a client, the landlord renovated the home and listened to his friend that was in the business years ago when they were allowing wild stuff to happen with Section 8. From quickly throwing a room in the basement and trying to say it was a full room and have no door, you can't do that. So it's not a 4-bedroom, it's a 3-bedroom. Oh, you put a washer and dryer. They don't even care about that anymore because most people now, the average landlord is now providing that. So that's not as special as it used to be. Before, if you put a washer and dryer, you could actually fight for rent to be about $100 more. Now that the new construction is coming in and they're finishing the basement, if you don't finish the basement properly, the house had a finished basement, but they didn't do it correctly. Housing failed them 4 times, and their rent did not go up as much as they wanted it to at all. But that was in that zip code, it was actually in Mount Airy section. I had a rental in West Philly, Section 8, whole different experience. They didn't fight them that hard. Was it done much better? No, but because the cheer group was in, they treated it differently. And it also goes by the inspector. If you got an inspector that cares about their job, they'll fail you. If you got an inspector that's just passing everybody, that's also part of it. The inspection team is a completely different department.
So 2 quick questions. Is it just best practice then to just list, if you're a landlord, list your house at rent at whatever the threshold level is, or?
No, because here, when you gotta remember, majority of people in Section 8 are accustomed to what the prices were. So if they need to move, and last year rent was $17.50 for a 2-bedroom, or no, 3-bedroom. And now it's $18.30 for a 2. They not looking for it.
So if you list your house now at $17.50,
It all depends. So here's the hard part. This is where it gets tricky. You gotta know the market, the zip code area. What are you seeing any changes in the amount of traditional rent, like a market rent for that? Like the gentleman has said before, that becomes a huge factor.
but then, so sorry, can you explain just a little bit more about the negotiating? So like you said, like if he submits, you said.
Yeah, so
So-
the approval of 1-bedroom in Mount Airy, it normally works for $11.95. We know that they get up to 15 something.
They
So,
go with it, okay.
Yeah, so I came in at 1,800. They came down to 1,550. So I already know that that's the also
But
happened.
so are those numbers that like, I thought that was like just the guarantee.
No, it's not guaranteed.
This is the max bill pay.
And what she's saying is.
Oh, that's the max.
Fight
Okay.
for the number, right? But no
Gotcha.
matter how much you fight, the tenant also determines the math, right? Because they're going to do up to 40%
Sure.
of their.
Okay, gotcha.
So PDP is 60 and tenant is 40, is that how that works, like the ratios?
It was 30. It's 30. Well, they went up this year to 40, but it was 30. So that's another thing. Starting whenever your lease goes up, or you renew your lease, some of those income variables will change. It used to be 30% of
And
the
it
rent.
takes 30% of the rent,
Yes,
but now it's 40.
it's going up to 40.
So it hasn't yet, but it's going up.
That's
Some
what I'm
are-
seeing, I'm seeing 40.
Hmm?
I'm seeing 40.
Yep. Now, some are still allowing the 30, because they're explaining the housing, they're not accustomed to that. Like, and I'm gonna have a hard time getting my rent all the time from them if we're going up 40%. But the numbers are, some people already started that. Some people, a lot of them look for, when this came into effect in October. So for the new year, some of them mail their clients letters out, hey, housing updated this, come January, y'all paying you 40% more. Some will wait till the lease term changes, so it's a smoother transition and they can really afford it. It literally depends on the integrity of the landlord.
So in your situation where like, you know, you are listing it for below the max. And then you go to HUD or HA and they come back and say, no, we'll do 1,800, even though you were listing it for, let's just say 1,500. So you got the permission from HUD to go to 1,800.
I don't get the permission from HUD. So what happens is you tell HUD what the rent is. You're telling them what the rent is.
And then you negotiate, they will go back and forth.
So
So,
earlier,
But it ultimately lands
just
on,
real quick, so earlier she mentioned something RMTA is called the RAP, and that's where you're listing what utilities the tenant pays, what the rent is.
yeah,
Yeah. And we're listing a higher amount. Assuming we're gonna get knocked down. And normally it lands kind of where we need to be.
but then tenant ultimately has the
Let me just
ultimate say, right?
no, the tenant doesn't.
They don't.
Technically, so the tenant really doesn't. It's literally the housing and the landlord. They will battle it out until they both come in agreement.
Okay.
But
But the
to
tenant,
that point, I was going to mention this, and this is important. The tenant has to be on the same page on what you're gonna ask for. Right? I can't just go in there and say, I'm gonna ask for 4,500, because that affects what the tenant pays. So I have to say, look, I'm gonna ask, this is how much it could impact your payment. Just me knowing the kind of the gamemanship, so that they're on the same page, right? Because if they know the rent is 1,195 and I'm gonna be asking for 1,800, they can blow up if they're not on board.
right,
Yeah. So,
right, okay, that makes sense.
so what am I doing? Am I including an order? Am I giving them something?
Gotcha.
I mean, that also depends on the type of agent. Because that's why when you put something in the MLS, it's supposed to be there. There's plenty of agents that encourage their landlord clients to, when they put in the request form, change the amount and the tenant doesn't know. But housing and the landlord was aware, but the tenant didn't. And then that's where you as an agent make sure you download it, whatever. If you're on the buy side, the tenant side of the transaction, you notify them. If you're on the landlord side, tell them to have integrity. If you listed your property there, don't play around with that amount of money. Like, they already literally cannot afford to live and rent on their own. So why, like, don't allow greed in the numbers to hike up. I had someone who did that and their listing sat for months, to the point where we took it off the market, because they got greedy with it. And it literally, there was only a couple $100 difference, $200 difference, would have had somebody in the unit for 2 years straight, but got so greedy with playing with the numbers. There was no need. You're going to get your money. Regardless, you're still making more money than the market value. So you really needed that extra $200? No, you didn't. But the greed came in, oh, I can get 1,800 instead of 16, even though the market value is saying 1,350 or 1,400. It's just when people see those numbers, they get issued for it. It's unfortunate. But I always tell respectfully tell my landlord clients, please be mindful, and if they choose to do it, that you have that choice. Just know your property will sit on the market long term. And then they're like, oh, well, it didn't move. A lot of people came but didn't apply because you decided to play around with the price. You didn't have to do that. So here's actually, so it's more clear what the map of Philadelphia is. It's literally all over the place with what group is what. Minus group 4, it's all down here. So here are other factors that they have. This is also new. The total tenant payment. Now they also going off of household size. They're being a little more considerate. They were always not like that. It used to be a flat tenant payment standard, no matter how many people were in the bedroom or in the house, how many bedrooms about
So this goes back to the 30 to 40%.
So it does, and then they take in consideration now, like, so housing just kind of adjusts stuff and doesn't think things through all the time.
It doesn't let people know, they just do it.
Yes, but then sometimes it doesn't make sense. They're telling you the 40 over here, and then over here they're saying, well, also based on how many, your household size, how many people, they're now going to adjust it. So they're gonna look at both numbers. And then kind of come, housing is known for, that's why it becomes really important that they, someone on a voucher pairs up with an agent and helps find a place. You're able to talk to housing, navigate, understand. This is very confusing to them. They don't, it's too much. It's confusing to housing. Half of them don't even know the owner rules. They just print it out. Because remember, HUD sends this out. There's a group of people that does this, send it out. The majority of people in Philadelphia Housing Authority know nothing about this. Your services, follow up. After you've completed your Section 8 transaction, remember, follow up just like any other client. Potential buyer, within 2 years, if they stay leased up, pay their rent, their utilities, that's mandatory, they have to stay up on their utilities, everything, for 2 years straight, they're allowed to use their Section 8 voucher or housing choice voucher for home ownership. It's a separate department, but it's still part of housing. And then repeat the process. A lot of times, if you do right by them, they'll call their friends and family. Hey, my agent helped me, and then call you. Hey, I got somebody for you. Can you help them? Can you help them? They in my situation, and you end up gaining long-term clients. Like I said, if you follow up with them, they can become a buyer in 2 to 3 years. Especially if you give them the resources like credit repair, anything. We have them talk to a lender after their first year. Same thing you would do with a regular rental. In housing, we'll pay that fee. And in rent, it goes to the mortgage and no, they do not have to pay it back. Thank you. Again, my name is Lanique with the Tess Adams Team. My contact with the business. If you have any other questions, just ask me. So a gentleman in the back and then I'll read.
Going back to the lease, so landlord and tenant have a lease, but then PHA has a lease with the landlord. So
They do.
there's no, but I guess this is a silly question, but like, there's no like landlord tenant lease that's outside of PHA lease. Like you
Not
can't,
anymore.
you have to, so like, if you have a tenant sign a lease with a landlord, that has to be presented to
Yeah, so
PHA, and they have to sign off.
So PHA actually now writes the lease. They first give it to the landlord. That's when the landlord can go over the entire lease, do all the negotiation. Once the landlord approves the lease, they'll send it to either the agent or directly to the client. I tell anyone on the landlord side, if you're the agent, the landlord, I have one client that does this with me. I'm able to negotiate with housing for him. I'm part of his contact team. So when you do that, it tends to be a smoother transaction. By him being an agent and he having Section 8 property, he already knows how to navigate.
Right.
It makes it a smoother transition. He knows what he wants to negotiate, what parts. He doesn't get caught up with all the itsy bitsy little parts and being petty with it. When you have a landlord that gets greedy and all that and gets real petty, it becomes a disaster of trying to get the client to leave. It can take over a month. It shouldn't take over a month.
And sometimes they try to cut you out.
And they don't try to be smart and cut you out. And I had that happen to me.
Yeah, those
I'm
are
going
reaching
to
out
that right
directly to the tenant and to housing and cut you out of it, and housing doesn't like stick up for you either. They don't care.
No.
Sure.
Yeah.
But if you mess up as the agent, at any point in housing finds out, they're calling you broke. So they don't support you, but they will blame you for any and everything.
Yeah.
Just want to mention one thing that's really important in this process is the inspection, just so we're managing our time and respecting our time. If there's properties that are not going to pass their PHA's inspection, do not waste your time if the landlord is not willing to make those repairs or practically doesn't let yesterday, that's not a property you want to sign up for. And if you're representing a landlord, get the pre-inspection done, if that can.
That was what I mentioned it.
You can do pre-inspections through the city, your PHA.
Through the HA's website.
Okay.
I think you mentioned the name of it earlier.
Yes,
It's in the portal, they'll tell you, would you like a pre-inspection?
yeah, and you suggest just doing that for any property, just to like know, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, okay, and then, my other question was gonna be, for landlords who aren't certified or don't have the certification, whatever, you still can somehow
You
do?
can. So if a private landlord agrees to let Section 8 in, you have to notify housing right away. What housing does is they'll expedite the process. They still gotta go through that, they still gotta go through those classes
Okay,
eventually. But what they will do is, they'll have somebody out inspect, the property, pass go, give you a timeline, what you need to do, and then they go from there. That sometimes end up being better for people to get into the Section 8 system as a landlord than going about it the other way. And they tell clients, you have to go find your own place, they don't help you. And the sheet of paper that they do give you that Section 8 approved, maybe 2 years outdated. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm multitasking, so you said this already, I apologize. But, if we have a client that has a voucher, and then we do a search, find a listing that says I accept Section 8 voucher,
No,
whatever
most of
it
them
says,
say Section 8 approved.
yeah, housing voucher, whatever. Can we assume that the landlord has gone through the inspections and everything? Like,
No,
they
you're
have-
having them lie, and the agents do not check if their client really got approved.
So you're saying the listing agent for that,
A lot of times they don't check, a lot of times the listing agent
First of
don't
all,
even go to the house.
I believe 90% of rentals don't even have rental licenses, because they aren't able to sell. So,
if the term I accept the housing voucher is on the listing, that they can just put that out there and didn't
Yeah.
do any of the work.
Yep.
Oh, okay. I thought they had to
No.
be approved.
So they're
Already, but-
but they're supposed to act like that, but the rest of them aren't.
Another thing that's happening is a lot of landlords have been tested. Meaning someone does a fair housing thing where they come and see if you're seeing, I do not accept Section 8, I do not do whatever. So some people will put that in there. It may not mean that they'll do it, like she alluded to in the beginning, some people play me with Section 8 tenants. I don't wanna go into the weeds on that. But it doesn't mean that they're necessarily doing it, plus you have to, just like real estate transactions, you might have to perform all the duties and roles to get it to where, to sell it or consummation. Right, because the landlord may not know, you can't assume the other party is competent, you just know you have to do your work.
That's why I said, if you're gonna be an agent to a landlord, encourage them to let you be on the communication side with housing. When that happens, just tell them the benefit, it's stress reliever, you'll take care of everything. It works so much better when you're communicating to housing directly than going to the landlord, because they lie, they make mistakes, and then they don't like being held accountable when it's their fault.
So I guess that's a little bit, as agents to
So
landlords.
always do your due diligence.
As agents to landlords, that would be like a little, maybe another level of stress, you have to deal with PHA, deal with their bullshit.
Yeah, when you say, I can take all that stress off of you, they might not say yes right away. Come week 2, week 3, and that property's on the market, they keep getting calls and housing, and then housing's not answering. The best is when housing don't answer that back. Then it's, can you call housing for me? You can call, but if they don't say that you're working on their behalf, nothing happens. Trick that I do, and it's not a bad trick, it's nothing illegal. Put it in an email, reach out to housing, say this is my client, put the client in the email. When it's in writing, housing be like, okay, let me check, this person's in the system, this person's not, whatever. It's so much smoother. Once that happens, you do that for your client, they kind of step back and be like, all right, here's the portal, here's access, here's this, can you call housing, I want to do this. My one client had not shown, went back to the housing building within 8 weeks. I do his housing fair, I do all that. The only thing I don't do is inspection, and that's because He's a hands-on person with the property, he fixes his own property, he wants to look at it. And we've also been in the process of always now getting his property pre-inspected, so it's a smoother transaction.
Re-inspections,
But the next class for PC is coming up. If y'all have any questions, feel free to, you can just call me, email me, see me, ask me.